Great news, everyone! The patches are flowing again, and we are back with another patch breakdown. But this time around, I'm joined by our head league writer and good friend, Tyler Esquera. We've got not one but two mini reworks to cover, a slight benching of the Kench, and the return of Nunu mid. All that and more after a week longer of waiting. This finally is the 11-16 patch breakdown. Karma players will know that she often says to never fear change. Well, I hope they took that advice to heart, because the Enlightened one is getting some pretty big changes that weren't in the original notes for this patch. The long and the short of it is that Riot wants to give her the Tahm Kench treatment and make it so that she's more accessible outside of coordinated pro play.
It's a two-pronged approach, Hank. First, Riot's hitting her early game wave clear by lowering her early Q base damage and cooldown timers, and although this might look pretty tough, her mantra Q is getting a significant buff at every level, with the ability's initial damage increasing from 175 to 220 at max rank. The big hit to her pro play potency, however, will come from her E. Its shield might be getting buffed at later levels, but the bonus movement speed buffs she gives is now being set to a static 40%. Her mantra E won't be giving a ton of speed to her team either, since allies will only be getting a 30% bonus movement speed buff compared to the 100% movement speed buff from before. Ultimately, Karma can still be played at multiple levels, but her late game value has been hit hard, since she can't help with her team with bonus movement speed. It also doesn't help that Shirelia's battle song provides the same bonus for almost 3 times the duration, so we'll probably be seeing less Karma in the pro scene.
On to another legacy support champion. Sona felt like she got put in the back seat a little bit with the release of Seraphine last year, or as many were dubbing her, Sona 2.0. So Sona is being put through a mini rework of her own, which we covered in a little more detail on our patch preview video for 11-16, but if you don't want to click, I know it's a lot of work. Here's the broad strokes of it. Her passive completely changes how she's going to be played. It's called Accelerando, and how it works is whenever you hit, not just cast, but hit either her Q or her W, both of which have had their mana cost reduced pretty significantly, you get a stack of Accelerando. Every stack gives you 0.5 permanent ability haste that only applies to your basic abilities up to a cap of 60 ability haste, so 120 total stacks at half ability haste per stack. After that, every stack of her passive you get after the cap reduces her ult's current cooldown, not its base cooldown, whatever cooldown it's on, by 1.5 seconds each time. So if your ult is up, say, 10 seconds before a big Baron fight, you can take some of that into your own hands and potentially get enough abilities off to lower the cooldown just enough to get a big cast off. Now, these changes are fun, sure, but are they enough to push Sona back into relevancy?
Sona's new changes are really interesting, and it should push players to try and meet her passive ability haste cap, so she can start to pump out her ultimate ability a lot more in the later stages of the game. However, I don't think this will make anyone want to play her more than before outside of maybe the first few weeks of experimentation. There are still plenty of other champions like Seraphine, Nami, who could do her job better, and she can also get punished way too easily by playmaking champions and other heavy damage support, since her 3-hit passive requires her to auto-attack. Her short range, low base health make her a prime target for poke and engages, especially in a meta featuring champions like Leona, Thresh, Alistar, and Nautilus.
So those are the big ones, and again a big thank you to Tyler for breaking down some of the implications and giving us some insight into what we might see in the near future for those two. There are other changes to cover though, so let's start with the nerfs, because quite a few meta junglers are getting hit. Diana's passive is getting a slight nerf as the bonus damage to non-epic monsters on it is going from 300% to 250, but everything else, including its AP scaling and damage on that front, is staying the same. So as a result, this should just hit her early game clear speed a bit, specifically because the AP that would make up for it later on just isn't in your kit through your first clear or two. Play and in solo queue has gone through the roof. His base AD is being dropped from 66, which is a very high amount all things considered, down to 63. This is to target his early skirmishing power, and as an Amumu main myself, any change like this is a welcome one. With a growth coefficient of 3 on that stat, however, it basically means that his base AD is lower by 3 at all levels. Lee Sin and Lane Sin have seen a, in my opinion, honestly pretty awesome resurgence into the meta with his versatility, but Riot has decided that with all his early game tools, of which there are a lot, he doesn't quite need the sustain that he has in that early to mid game, so the Omni Vamp as a result on his W is being taken down by 5% at all ranks. To round out the nerfs, Tahm Kench has been back in solo lanes and been able to trade just a little bit too well as a tank, so his sustain is taking a hit by way of his Tongue Lash's base heal going down by 5 at all ranks, and the base damage on his passive taking as much as a 4 damage hit early on. You'll still see him in competitive almost undoubtedly because his kit offers way too much utility still, but maybe not as much as powerfully in the solo lanes. Also being toned down are Fiora, as her E cooldown is going up at later ranks, as well as Lulu, since she's getting the cooldown on her W raised by 1 second at all ranks, while her ult will be on a 10-second longer cooldown at rank 1 and a 5-second longer cooldown at rank 2. Shaco is also getting a lot of bug fixes that I guess technically will result in a slight net nerf, since his Q's orange poof visual effect will no longer appear from an enemy's point of view when cast through Fog of War, and lots of ult bug fixes that you can read for yourself. On the buff train, well, choo-choo summoners, because Nunu mid and Bruiser J4 might just be coming back. I know, please hold your applause or your tears until the end though. Nunu's base movement speed is going up from 340 to 345, which will help his playstyle as a sometimes literal wrecking ball roamer that'll be a little more effective. And the big one, the AP ratio per snowball on his E is going up from 6% to 10%, but the total damage ratio is almost doubling up to 90% from 54%. We're not sure this will incentivize a straight up AP Nunu build, but if you're the kind of person that really wants to play AP Nunu, odds are those previous numbers weren't going to stop you anyway, so enjoy the extra damage. Jarvan IV is also receiving some jungle lovin', with his passive damage now dealing 10% of the target's current health, up from 8%, and his ult will now hit that extra little bit harder if you go a more bruisery route instead of a straight up tank and gank and spank build, because now the damage scales off 180% of your bonus AD instead of a measly 150%. Maokai is getting some help for his top lane self, as his lane sustain will be helped by the healing from his passive up a little bit, now with correct tooltips showing the increased base and percent max health healing. His saplings, however, in an effort to target support Maokai a little bit, will have their damage toned down just a hair, doing the same base damage percentage, but adding on only 0.7% of the target's max health per 100 AP instead of 0.8%. Jhin's W's base damage is up by 10 at all ranks, and his ult's minimum damage ratio has been nudged up 5%, while the AD ratio on Sivir's W has been bumped up big in the late game as well. Top lane Vladimir should also feel a little more worth to slam health items on due to his passive AP to health conversion going up by 20%, and the converse bonus health to AP conversion going up a small but significant less than 1% buff. And finally, Ziggs is being pushed into the mid lane. At least that's what Riot wants. He's getting the 60 starting mana he lost in 11-14 thrown back into his mana pool, but his Explosive Minefield's base damage per mine is losing damage early and gaining it back late, and the slow per mine is getting hit pretty hard at early ranks as well, down to only 10% at rank 1 from 30%. There aren't too many item changes, just 2 of them, a buff and a nerf. Darkseal is getting hit pretty hard, making it a much riskier buy as was intended. You only gain 4 AP per stack instead of 5, and when you die, you lose 5 stacks instead of 4. Redemption is also getting its heal bumped up by 20 early and as much as 40 late based on level, and its cooldown is now only 90 seconds, down from a full 2 minutes. And to round out the changes coming in patch 11.16, of course, skins. Evelynn, Cassiopeia, Ahri, and Ashe are all getting Coven skins, and Malphite and Warwick are getting the other side of the coin thematically and joining/debuting the Old God skin line. All these changes, especially those reworks, are huge and target 2 longtime champions, so to the mains of those champions, let us know what you think. Is Lane Karma dead? Will Sona remain eternally in Seraphine's shadow? Is Lethality Assassin Bruiser J4 back for good as God intended? Drop your takes in the comments. And until then, read up on the rest of the changes on our website. Take care, and we'll see you back here real soon.